Good morning, everyone. So happy that you guys are here to join us. As Anne had mentioned, my name is Elena Lobianco. I am a second year Startup Week volunteer. Very excited to be here. I work for a company called TriNet. We actually provide HR services to startups and small businesses. Very excited about this panel. And with that being said, I'll pass it over to our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves.
Sure, I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name's Kara Hogan. I'm the VP of Marketing at Ship-in Systems, which is a company that sells software to international shipping companies. So Maersk. Uh, I like to say that we're trying to prevent the next Ever Given from happening, if you remember that fun story, and making international shipping more modern and safer for all.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Farhana Cannon. I'm a global brand marketing strategist and the founder of iMedia Exposure and the Divine Brands Collective. And I help brands attract, connect with, and convert their ideal client. And I'm so excited to be here with you guys today.
Hey, folks. My name's Andy Jacques. Everyone calls me AJ. I'm the co-founder and COO of Synergy Consulting. We are a product development company with the office here in Boston and also in Stamford, Connecticut. We basically help emerging technology founders pretty much design, build, and then launch their web and mobile applications. Prior to that, my co-founder and I, we had an events production company where we help consumer good and luxury products pretty much launch and brand into several different markets from Boston, New York, London, and Paris during Fashion Week events. And most recently in 2018, I started a thing called Founders Live Boston here, where it's basically a Shark Tank style pitch competition once a month in collaboration with CIC and AWS to basically feature 5 founders every month in front of 3 to 4 angel investors to pitch their ideas. So I've kind of heard thousands of pitches and brand ideas from a lot of different ventures. So thanks for having me.
Thank you all. So, as we know, we are discussing brand identity today. Whether you're on solid footing with your company's brand or going through a pivot, navigating brand identity is an important part of your journey as a founder or marketing professional. So, to start off, I think a good question to throw out to the group is, how should one be thinking about creating a brand identity?
I can go.
Sure.
So I think when you're thinking about your brand identity, it's really important to understand what your core values are, what you're bringing to the world, who your target demographic is, what the problems are that you're solving that they have, and how you connect the pieces. We see some brands that start off and they're like, okay, it's all about us. But what the consumer wants to know is that it's all about them. And so they really want to know how you serve them, what problems you're solving, as well as if your core values align. In today's market, there's so many different companies to choose from. And I think consumers are getting more aware of being in alignment with those core values, and if their needs are really being met. It's not like there's one shop that can do it all, or that's the only option. So I think that that's really important.
Definitely. What tools should one leverage to successfully market themselves?
Tools could be almost anything. And I feel like so many people approach marketing and they think about the channel first. They think, oh, we have to have a presence on LinkedIn or TikTok, and oh, we need our website, we need these things. You're thinking about the place you're posting first, which is not necessarily the smartest way to approach it. Being on LinkedIn is not a strategy, of course. So leveraging all those tools is great, but making sure that you are being consistent, that you're having the same message across all of those channels, and that you're not saying something different than what your sales team is saying on calls, than what your customer success team is saying when they're supporting the customer, is the key to having a brand. Having a brand is really your reputation. So that reputation has to be the same in every place. So the tool is, I think, less important than consistency. And if you think tool first rather than brand first, you might get distracted by, oh, we need to be part of this conversation. We need to be on this hashtag. We need to, use this sound. That's not that's not gonna build your brand effectively.
I agree. I think what Kara just said. Actually, before I echo that, can I ask how many of you guys are entrepreneurs, just so I could get a little bit more context? Anyone doing like B2B type of platforms, consumer goods? Who's just a student, maybe thinking about launching something in the future, but not yet launched anything yet? Okay, got it. When I look at technologies to leverage, I see a lot of, especially early stage founders, they get caught up in trying to do everything and trying to be on every single platform. I think you should first think about which platform are your consumers using and focus on that, because as an early stage founder, your resources are extremely limited. You only have a certain amount of hours of the day. You might not even have a full, social media team to really engage what you want to do. So a lot of times you're kind of wearing multiple hats. So you really have to understand, where do you shine best at? If you're like a more long format type of person and you're selling a B2B type of platform or product, maybe, LinkedIn is a good format for you, and especially if you know how to write well. If your product is more visual, maybe IG is better. But you need to kind of pick one. You don't need to think that you need to be on every single platform. The best brands actually fully optimize one, and then they kind of scale from there.
Just to add to what these two were saying, I totally agree with both of them. Like, having your messaging be really down packed so that all aspects of your business, you know what that messaging is, who you're having that message for. So you might have a couple of different target demographics. So being really clear of what the message is, what the products and services are for each one of those, but then really creating a strategic sales and marketing funnel. Like, you can have the best LinkedIn, and you see tons of influencers out there on all of the platforms, and they're not making any money because there's no sales and marketing funnel and strategy set up. So I think it's getting your messaging really clear, knowing who you're communicating, where they're hanging out, but then also having a system of sales and marketing in your back end. Where are you taking them? What are your freebie offers? How are you capturing those leads? How are you following up? I think in many of my clients, where they fall off is in that follow-up. You get so inundated with all of the things in your day-to-day, and if you have like an automated system, like they go into this freebie offer, and then there's like a series, they get that sales call, or they get another email to book a discovery call, then they get invited to the workshop or whatever it is. So having those systems in place saves you time, and you can do as much as you want on like that front end social media platform space. And then also, your website should have ways to capture leads. It's great if it's pretty and it has your brand colors, and that's important too, but you want it to actually serve a purpose and provide solutions for people to actually take action, to know a little bit more about you and do business with you.
Structure is also very important, like Farhana just mentioned. I think lastly, whatever platform you use, spend a couple of hours or even a few days and learn the science behind that platform, how the algorithm works. LinkedIn is totally different than IG. IG is totally different than Twitter, or X, I should call it. But you need to understand certain activities within the features of the platform result in more reach than other activities. Stories might perform better than reels in one particular platform, and it might be different in another. So you need to kind of understand the science behind the algorithms and know how it works, so you can game it better, so you can actually see results. Because another thing I see with entrepreneurs is, when they're not seeing results, consistency goes down, right? So to get consistency, you got to understand how the platform works to your advantage.
Absolutely. Very good points. Kara, I mean, everybody kind of touched on consistency is key. Kara, how can you ensure that your brand identity is consistent across all platforms?
That is a tough one, because I feel like sometimes as the VP of marketing, you have to be the brand police across your company, and it's not always super fun. You end up going to the sales team and being like, "Hey, so I saw this deck that you were presenting yesterday, and where did you get this template? Why did you say that we do that thing that we don't do? Our product can't do that. You're selling something that doesn't exist." Like, these are real conversations that you have to have, and they can be kind of uncomfortable. So you have to go to them and build that trust and be aware of what's going on across the company, which is hard sometimes if you're very busy and you are trying to be everywhere and you're trying to do so many things. But you have to recognize that the brand matters across every touch point. So I have been mostly in B2B SaaS startups from early stage to kind of growth stage. But at every company, if you can set yourself up for success by sharing the brand very proactively, like getting ahead of it so that you're saying, okay, here's a package of everything that's accessible to everyone. So here's a template for our deck. Here is the social message that I would like you to post. Here is like all these things that will enable you to do the job and also remain on brand so that you don't have to constantly be bothering everyone and like bugging them like, hey, you did this wrong. Hey, you did this wrong.
Making everything accessible
Yes.
to the team so that they put out and your message stays consistent regardless of who is.
Yeah. You have to, create that brand messaging doc that you've shared with everyone at the company. You've gotten input from everyone. You've gotten everyone's buy-in and everyone's like, yes, this is how we're talking. This is what we're saying. We all agree. And also as a marketer, for me, it makes my job easier because I know that the CEO says thumbs up to this entire document. So if I'm pitching to the media, if I'm posting on social, I don't necessarily have to get as many approvals because they're already on board. They say, yes, that is what we want to be saying. So it de-stresses my life and also makes everyone else stay on brand as well. So it's all about that proactive communication of here's our messaging, here's our brand. This is the way we are operating.
And communication within team is super important, but I see things fall apart. The disconnect happens when you're passing it on to like a third party or external vendors, and then it just falls apart. So those brand guidelines, you have to give them to whoever vendor you're using and you're contracting out to. That's super important. Or it's gonna waste a lot of money and a lot of time fixing mistakes that they do. And they don't refund you, folks. So
Even to what they're saying, even having like a Google Drive folder when you're externally sending out work, having to what the brand guidelines are, having your brand colors, the color codes, the fonts, having the aesthetic, having the messaging, having your core values, having like a little flip deck in there. And then even having, so some of my clients, I'll write we don't say this. There's certain clients that will be like, we don't do scare tactic marketing. And so when you're outsourcing an ad campaign, somebody might do that. But if you have specifically there, we only talk positive, we only talk like this. These are words we don't use, even being specific to saying words that you're not going to use. So just having that all there. And so when you hire somebody in internally, they have all that information, or if you're outsourcing pieces, they have all of that information. So you're not like redoing this, having these conversations multiple times as well saves a lot.
Yeah. And I think, the thing you're trying to prevent is that conversation. You're trying to prevent oh, I saw this ad of ours on LinkedIn and I hate it. It's wrong. It's not what we want to be saying. It's the wrong colors, whatever. Like that's the thing you're trying to prevent. And it's probably going to happen. It probably will happen at some point that someone is going to see something that you have made and say, what is this? But hopefully if you spend the time up front to create that document with all that is accessible to everyone at the company, with the brand colors, with the messaging, with everything that you've agreed upon, you will prevent that hopefully.
So we've uncovered some challenges. What are some other unique challenges and opportunities that you've seen that tend to arise when marketing products and services in a B2B context?
I think a lot of founders, they try to project what their brand stands for. Like, when it comes to branding, I think branding is all about what your customer feels about the product and how the product or service makes them feel. But a lot of founders, they just project what they feel and that they don't listen to their consumers, they don't listen to their target audience, and they're just like talking, um, and they're not really telling a compelling story to make that emotional connection. I think that's the biggest challenge branding folks kind of make or founders make that don't know about branding.
And I think also too, having the ability to be in flow. So being able to listen and make adjustments, things happen. Like, when COVID happened, people had to pivot, and the people that didn't pivot, they got stuck in an uncomfortable place. And so it's about listening to what the market needs, seeing what other companies are doing. Like, I'm always researching other brands and what they're doing. So if I have a customer in this area, I'm consistently watching and seeing what the trends are in that area so that we can create new and innovative ideas and messaging that works. So you can't get stuck and we just said it was this and we're going to stay to this all the time. Like, you have to make changes, expand on products and service offerings, and kind of go with the flow with it too, and listen to others, listen to what the market's saying.
Yeah, that brand document we were talking about, it should not be static. It should be updated pretty frequently. And I think the other thing that I hear a lot, probably, I think every single company I've worked at, every single startup was like, we must create a category. We need to create a category. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, our product is so unique and so special that it is its own category, and we are going to make something a category. And it's like, okay, we're trying to make fetch happen here. Like, let's not do this. Like, your product doesn't always need to be a category. Your product can be a simple, straightforward solution that solves something for your customers. It doesn't have to be a grand vision every time. A brand does not have to be so aspirational. Like, yes, you want it to be, you know, be somewhat aspirational, but it does not have to be so much bigger than what it truly is. And I see that a lot with founders where you're like, no, we are not this solution. That's too small. We're bigger than that. We're better than that. And it's like, okay, but if people want to buy that, why are you arguing with them? Like, why are you fighting? People are coming to you and saying, I want to buy this solution. It's great. I really want it and it's useful to me. And you're like, yeah. But I don't want to put that as a headline on our website. I want it to be this big, big idea that it isn't really. So I think a lot of founders tend to fight themselves in branding, and they're trying to make something work when, their audience is telling them what they are and what they want, and they're just not listening.
I think overall founders just put way too much pressure on themselves. And I get it, as entrepreneurs, we're perfectionists. We want to be, Superman, Superwoman, but you got to stop putting too much pressure, especially when we're talking about branding. We're talking about a lot of social media content. And when it comes to content creation, I'm a huge advocate of, I don't know if anyone knows who Gary Vee is, but his philosophy is, don't create. How does he put it? He said, document, don't create. Because if you're trying to just create, you might not be a creative person, right? So that's putting a lot of pressure on yourself to come up with something creative every single social media post or piece of content. It's better to just document the journey of you launching the company, of you getting partners, of you getting pilot programs, of your first testimonial, of someone experiencing the product. Do a better job at storytelling instead of forcing yourself to come up with some creative, this new idea that no other company has ever done in a post before, like that's a lot of pressure. And with that, what I mentioned earlier, you're not going to see consistency in that because you're not perfect. So how likely are you to have a really creative piece every week or every day? It's almost impossible. So, don't focus on just creating, document more.
I think that's a really good point. Staying genuine to yourself, to your company, to your brand, what you're trying to put out. And sometimes it's the simple things that sets the best message out there. And a good way to be genuine is with storytelling, genuine experiences. Andy, you had touched on this a couple times, so I'll pose this question to you. How does storytelling and marketing contribute to building brand identity and customer loyalty?
I think it establishes a connection with the consumer. A lot of business is personal. People are not gonna resonate. Your product won't resonate with person unless they relate to the story that you're telling, the problem, unless they have a common thread with the problem that you're presenting. So try to describe your brand more in storytelling, because it resonates with the person. The best pitches I've heard from Airbnb to Uber, like I've seen thousands and thousands of decks. I've heard hundreds and hundreds of live pitches. The best pitches start off with a story because you start seeing the audience like start shaking their head yes. And once they start shaking their head yes, you got them. And they're listening to the rest of the 2 to 3 minute story. But if they're not starting off shaking their head yes, you pretty much lost them. Everyone has short attention spans and they're on their phone. They're on to the next.
And the human brain actually connects and remembers when you tell a story. So think about when you were a child, you remembered those storybooks before you could read. You knew that story and you would say the words that you couldn't even read. And so when we share a story with people and it resonates with them and they can look back at their past, or there's something in your story that moves them emotionally, you're now having them hooked in present to what you're saying. And then you can go on to the points. But if we're just giving information, think about classes that were boring. You just got information and maybe you took notes. I was probably checked out, but still taking notes. But when somebody presented it as a story and an opportunity, then you were like, okay, this is cool. And so it's even just from a perspective of brands and having people remember you and connect with you. And when we think of brands that we shop from, it's these experiences, how the products and services made us feel, how the people that we worked with made us feel. That's what builds brand loyalty as well.
Yeah, and I do think that we did that great little survey of the room of who's in B2B versus B2C. You see that B2C really gets that storytelling matters. Like they understand that this is so key, and I think the B2B world is a little bit behind. You'll see a lot of B2B people say something about storytelling. They'll have it on whatever their LinkedIn profile, like I love storytelling. But but what does that mean exactly in a B2B world? It can be a little more complicated. But I agree. Like if you can figure out something that resonates with them, you always, I think, have to have empathy for the buyer. You have to get in their head and think about how they feel. If you're always talking about yourself, if you're saying, we do this thing, we're so amazing, we're so awesome. No. You have to flip it around and say, like, what is your problem? What are you struggling with? What would be helpful to you? How do you feel today? And how can we help you? That's really my core marketing values. You want to be helpful to them. And if you are, they'll remember it. And that's true in, interpersonal relationships. If you're helpful to someone, if you help them and don't ask for anything in return, they remember and they'll pay it back. That can be true, surprisingly, in B2B marketing. If you're giving them helpful information, useful content, something that makes their lives easier, they will then come to you maybe when they want to buy something.
100%. Yes. People buy from people. You need to remember that on the other side of that computer screen or tablet screen, phone screen, whatever it may be, these are actual people that you're trying to connect with and build these relationships with. To dig a little bit deeper in that, as the world has changed and the way that we buy, market, and sell things has evolved and we're growing, For companies with a global presence, how do cultural nuances and regional differences impact the way marketing campaigns are developed and executed? I'll throw that out to anybody but Kara if you want. Go first.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, this is very relevant because we sell to a global audience at my current company. And I mean, that's true for many businesses, but it's very true in shipping. We actually change kind of completely our messaging based on where people are located in the world. So, for example, our system is very concerned with data privacy, but some of our buyers care and some could not care less. So if we're selling in Northern Europe, if we're talking and targeting to an audience in Finland or in Iceland or anywhere in Northern Europe, for some reason, that audience really, really cares. I think it makes sense if you think about like EU regulations that are coming down the pipe right now. There's a lot of focus on GDPR and facial recognition, all these things. So when we speak to someone in that audience, specifically talk about that because we know that they care. If we're selling to an audience in Singapore or in Greece for some reason, they don't care. I don't know why. They only care about the bottom line. And you discover that over time by learning and understanding, again, what your buyers care about. But I actually completely change our messaging for ads, for decks, for any communication with those audiences based on that.
Yeah, that totally matters. And even if you think about just in the United States, the market in Miami is going to be different than the market in Boston to Austin. For the Divine Brand Collective, we're throwing day retreats in different cities, and how we're positioning them, it's the same message, but it's a little bit different just because of what is already there in the market. So if you are selling to across the United States or across the world, you want to see what the trends are in that market, what the languages that they use, the things that they care about, and then tweak that message a bit as well. And as well as if you're targeting different demographics within your company for different services, you're going to want to maybe tweak that message a little bit so that they feel as though you're really talking to them.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit because I see founders make the mistake of going global too fast, and they end up not focusing on their core demographic. You got to have a niche and just ride that wave like for a long time and really perfect your product and perfect the messaging and the brand before you expand more. Founders just kind of, and I've made that mistake so many times in the past where I tried to go too broad too early, and I end up spinning my wheels and really clouding the brand and the direction I wanted the roadmap of my product to go. And some products failed because of that. So try to be very niche as much as possible for early on. And I'm assuming I'm talking to a lot of startup founders here. So that's just my
solid advice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Speaking of effectiveness, what metrics or indicators can be used or are used by any one of you guys to measure the effectiveness of brand identity and its impact on the business and consumers?
Since my firm, we build web and mobile products, so we use like a lot of attribution tools. The best one I think is Google Firebase, and we really see how consumers are engaging with either the web tool or the mobile product, and really understanding which screens to optimize. But very early on, you want to either get Google Analytics in or Firebase into whatever product you have, just so you could watch what's going on and see what your consumers are doing and interacting with the product. It's a little bit different on like a consumer good product. I don't know if Farhan has more insight on that.
So another way is ad campaigns, seeing A/B testing them, seeing, what demographics. For ad campaigns, I like to do really specific A/B testing for specific areas. So it would be just Boston. I wouldn't lump in like Boston and New York. I would just do a whole nother A/B testing for New York, because also the market's a tad bit different, even though we're quite similar. So that's one way to track, as well as in your funnel. you want to see where people start falling off, where they start unsubscribing. So what freebie offers are they interested in? How many people are signing up from that? And then are they booking that discovery call? Are they buying a product or service? And sometimes if it's getting on a call, like maybe they fall off after that, is what the follow-up is after that. Is it just human to human? Is it text messaging? So you want to kind of look at those stats too.
Yeah, I think direct response marketing is so much easier to measure. So you're like, okay, we put an ad on LinkedIn, and then this many people clicked on it. Our click through rate was this, and then this many people converted, and I can measure that all through the funnel. I can say like, okay, our paid ads program on LinkedIn brought in this much revenue. That's easy. The harder part is the fuzzier brand stuff like PR, content, events, where they had a conversation with you in person. And the only way that I have personally found to reliably measure that is direct traffic. So if someone is typing in the name of your company into Google and then coming to your website, your brand's doing pretty good. If you're not getting any, you can kind of measure that over time, see if it goes up, see if, for example, I have seen when we did a big press release and a big news story across the industry, I have seen direct traffic spike, and then I have seen a spike in people requesting demos, specifically sometimes from that geographic area. So we announced a new customer in Greece who was pretty influential, put out a big press release, and then we saw 3 Greek companies come in that week. Now, I can't say for sure what that was from, but I'm pretty sure it was from that. Like, you can't say the same way you can say someone clicked on my LinkedIn ad and then they converted, but you can say, okay, I'm pretty sure that getting that coverage, that doing this customer announcement made people think, oh, I want to check that out. So that's the way I think about it.
Wonderful.
And be careful when you see the leakage. Be careful not to try to like tweak the messaging too early, because it could come from, they might not be the right demographic for you, right? It could have been that the person who optimized the ad didn't do it well enough, right? Or do the affinity group targeting well enough. So you got to really understand the mechanics behind it before you start making a lot of changes to the brand messaging and the storytelling and all that, because a lot of times it's not really, the leakage won't come from the actual person interested in the brand. It'll be the result of whoever set up the ad. They probably did it incorrectly or with the wrong targeting.
And there's also things that won't have that direct connection right away, like a PR piece. Somebody could see that 6 months later and, opt in. So I was featured in an article in Trinidad in their major newspaper. And a year later, National Petroleum, their major oil and gas company, asked me to do their marketing. And it was a year later that I spoke at that event. 6 months later, they contacted me. And like 3 months later, I spoke to the CEO to start, working there. And so some things definitely do take longer, like speaking at an event. Like I run a mastermind, and so I'll speak at an event. Somebody will show up to my mastermind maybe a couple months later, and then a year later, they're ready to work with me. So like what Andy's saying is don't kind of fall off or change your messaging just because you don't get that conversion right away, because things take longer depending upon what marketing tool you're using.
Yeah, I do see that a lot with early stage founders is impatience with marketing. Like just immediately thinking, I put money in, where's my money out? Like that's not how it works. It could take a year to really see results.
Trust the process.
Yeah, you have to trust the process. You have to give it enough time to even decide if it was a success or a failure. If you're changing your strategy every 2 months, you haven't even gotten enough data to tell you if it was working or not. And you may have actually pivoted to a strategy that's working less. And you don't know because you didn't give it enough time.
Consistency is key, folks. If nobody's taken a note yet, I think that's a good one to write down. In your expertise and opinion, as far as being impatient, how long, depending on, and I guess it's a little bit of a tricky question to ask, but how long do you wait before you kind of pull a plug and decide, well, this isn't working. Maybe I do need to pivot. Maybe I do need to try something else, a new outlet or a new form of outreach of sorts.
I think being a part of different mastermind groups and connecting with other entrepreneurs and asking questions. And I think as entrepreneurs, we feel like we need to have all of the answers and we need to do it all alone. And quite frankly, as humans, that's not how we're built. We're built to have community and support one another and get ideas off of one another and build and grow from that perspective. And so that's kind of the first step. You might have this amazing thing, but go and connect with others and put your ideas out there and get feedback and make little tweaks. Don't completely go and pivot, but make little tweaks to improve. And what we were just saying is that people try one thing, and if they're not getting instant clicks right then, I'll have startups work with me and they're like, okay, we just want to do social media. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to have a whole funnel first. We need to make sure where we're taking these people. We need to do ad campaigns. Like, you're not going to start a social media campaign from 0 followers and then expect to make $5,000 that month. Like, let's be clear, there's millions of other people on social media trying to do the same thing. So we have to spend time, and it's not just one avenue too. Like, it's like, what communities are you collaborating with? What partnerships, what affiliates? What does your sales team look like? You can't just do marketing without sales, and people kind of forget that. And as an entrepreneur, as a startup, you'll have a smaller team, or maybe it's just you trying to wear all of those hats. And so you can't just give up because you're spending X amount of time and you're not getting all of these results when you don't have that many resources. So for a specific time, I can't really say that, but there's definitely lots of opportunities to look into it.
Yeah, there's not a silver bullet when it comes to the time you should spend before you make that decision. But if you're seeing trends occur within multiple layers of the organization, you're hearing the same thing from your co-founders, you're hearing the same thing from your product managers, you're hearing the same thing from your customer support folks, and then you're hearing the same thing from your consumers, then you know what, it's probably time for a
Pretty
change.
good indicator that.
But a lot of founders that I've worked with, I see them they only evaluate things through the lens of the C-level team, and then they force decisions there down the pipeline. And it's that's the totally wrong approach. And then they end up making these very short, irrational decisions based on emotion and not based on the actual science and the A/B testing and the feedback and the focus groups and all that other stuff. It's a collage of things that will get you to make the right decision, not just one emotion per se.
And I also think that it depends on, it sounds counterintuitive, but the cost of your product and the length of your sales cycle are super important. So if you're talking about a consumer good product that costs $14, that buying decision is a lot shorter and faster, and you're going to get data a lot faster. So you're going to be able to make a decision about what's working and what's not very quickly. If you're selling to the enterprise, which is what I do, you're talking about a buying cycle that could be 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or more, but likely not under a year. That's unlikely. So you are not getting feedback for such a long time that it can be very difficult to even understand what is working. And yes, you have to go sometimes on anecdotal data, which makes me very uncomfortable. I hate it. I want some data, I want some numbers, but you can get some data from your LinkedIn ads or from your customers, from a survey. There's certain things that can help guide that decision, but you really have to think, what for your business, how fast is that cycle of feedback? How can you get it, and how can you speed that up a little bit if it is so long?
Yeah,
Excellent points.
I've had clients that are like, oh, I did this program and they're selling a $5,000 course. They're like, I just posted on social media, and why didn't anybody buy my $5,000 course? I'm like, well, nobody knows what they're getting. And that's $5,000 that somebody's not going to just click on Instagram and be like, yep, here's my $5,000. But yeah, how many things did I buy for $14 on Instagram? Because I'm like, oh, whatever. I want this cute little thing. It's little thought goes into that press pay. But when it's a $5,000 thing, you need to have more information. And so that life cycle will be different. And the amount of work that you need to put in, you could spend $10 in an ad campaign and sell $20, $14 things. But are you going to spend $10 on an ad campaign to sell 5,000? It's very different.
And I do think everyone should be very aware that the cost of ads on a lot of these platforms is going up and the return is going down. So brand is your cover in that case. If your business is reliant on Facebook ads, Instagram ads, LinkedIn ads, that platform is not your friend. They're trying to take as much money from you as they can and give you nothing unless you are very, very careful about it. So, you have to constantly tweak those ads, play with them, make sure you're getting a lot out of it. But these brand activities like PR, your website, organic social media, all of these things can back up and support your efforts through paid and help you just have a little bit more certainty and a little bit more security in your business. So you're not reliant on if like Meta decides to change their algorithm and you're completely out of luck.
Coming from an events background, like that experiential marketing pays dividends. So whatever business, if you're B2B, B2C, whatever business you have, earlier on, if you could start off, I know it's not easy to scale, but if you could start off earlier on trying to have those high touch point activities with your customers, you'll learn better. The sales cycle will be shorter. You'll save money. I'm telling you, it'll pay dividends.
And experiential marketing is essentially storytelling. You now have given somebody a point of their life, an experience where they're experiencing, and it's something that they won't forget. You see something on social media, you scroll by it, and even things that I want to buy, I'm like, oh, I forget that thing. But if I go to an event, like there is a whole set of information that I've now collected and kept it in my brain.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question before we'll turn it over to the audience for Q&A. What about somebody who is looking to make a change? What are some key elements for them to consider, be aware of when rebranding, and how can a brand successfully navigate such a transition?
So I went through a massive rebrand with my last company. They actually changed the name of the company.
Oh, wow.
And it was very intense and it was a big decision, obviously. And they, I had actually been working on SEO for the past year. So I don't know if anyone here is an SEO person, but you can understand my absolute panic and terror at the thought of changing the company's URL. I was about to lose a year's worth of work. So this was a very, very serious decision for us to decide, like, what is this change of the name going to better represent like the future vision of the company? But it was a massive undertaking. Like it involved every single department within the company. This was a Series B, so rather bigger, larger organization. And we had to go through with a fine-tooth comb every single asset that we had created to change the name on everything, change the colors, change the branding. We did a massive PR launch that timed with our funding announcement. It was an aggressive undertaking, but I think it paid off. But we didn't make that decision lightly. So if you're making a change to your branding, just remember like what you're giving up. You're giving up SEO value in this case, we were literally changing the name of the company and the URL and all of that brand recognition that we had built up over years. We decided to wipe it out. And I think it was the right decision, but you can't make that call lightly. You have to recognize like what value have you already created in your brand and what are you changing? It's okay to change the messaging, but maybe you don't want to change your logo, or maybe you do if it's the right call for your business, but it's you gotta think about it really hard before you do it.
I think in this arena, since we are talking to startups, I think, she's talking about a large scale company that had tons of assets and they made the decision. And I think I work with people and they come to me for their marketing plan and helping with furthering their branding. And I'm like, okay, wow, looks like I'm stuck in 1990 and it's targeting my grandma that doesn't use the internet. So, okay, we need to change this. But people get so stuck in, I got to keep this the way it is. And if we look at the iterations of Dunkin' Donuts, it's no longer donuts in there because donuts are unhealthy and not cool. They still sell the same things in there. But like if we think of that local Boston brand that is now all over the world, they have changed their colors, their logos, their fonts, and even their name. And so in this arena as a startup, it's totally okay to you get attached to this thing and you're like, I created this thing, I'm attached to it and I'm vested in this. But it's completely okay if you take a pause and you make changes so that you're presenting yourself as modern and current, and that people that you're actually targeting will be like, oh, that's cool, I like that. Because it's really not about us and our attachments. And I think as an entrepreneur or as a startup, we get so consumed by our baby that we built that we like inhibit the growth and development and the real connection with who we're trying to serve. So I think it's cool. Like, I have a digital course that I teach and I have multiple examples. Just think of like Apple. Like, Apple actually started off with this like elaborate Macintosh sketch design, and now it's like super clean and chic. And for the last 10 years, we know exactly what we're going to get from Apple. We know exactly what that packaging is going to look like and what those stores are going to look like, no matter if we're in Hong Kong or we're in LA or we're in Shanghai.
I think your best customers, if you're talking to them enough, they will tell you, they will let you know what the right decision is, whether you should rebrand or not. I mean, I'm a fan of iteration a lot. I just feel like some people iterate too early and they're making like just emotional decisions and they're not really talking to their core customer base before they make that really big decision. So talk to your customers as often as you can, and they will tell you whether the brand sucks or whether you have a brand period at all, or whether they have emotional connection to you or not. If you're doing focus groups, if you're talking to them, surveys, like you gotta reach out and talk to them. At the end of the day, you might think you have a sucky brand or you might think you have an amazing brand, but I tell people this all the time, like the market is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Like they will tell you, if you're listening, they will tell you what to do and what direction to go towards.
To that point, though, some people will people please, because I have a client with the most terrible tagline that doesn't even grammatically make sense. And I'm trying to very gracefully pivot that. And she's like, oh, my friends think it's great. And I'm like, okay.
Are your friends paying for the product on a consistent basis? That's
Right.
what you need to ask her.
Awesome. Well, thank you, wonderful panelists. I'll leave it over to Anne. If anybody has questions in the audience, raise your hand. She'll shoot over with that mic.
Hi, thanks for speaking today.
Hey.
You talked about aligning values with the brand identity. I'm interested in how you get that alignment internally and with your team before translating that into the identity.
What's your name?
I'm Mark.
Mark. I'll start off. Mark, good question. In terms of buy-in, you got like as the leader, as the founder, it has to be woven into the fabric of everything you do. So for example, I'm the co-founder, CEO of Synergy Consulting. I do a lot of biz dev. I'm always on the scene, like meeting founders, doing business development. One of our core values is innovation and cutting edge technology. And people are surprised. They're like, I'm meeting them at an event and they're surprised. They ask me for my business card. I'm like, I don't have business cards. Because I believe in innovation, connectivity. What's your LinkedIn? Let's connect on LinkedIn right now. That's part of my core values. That's part of my brand. So I'm consistent with that. And my team sees that I'm consistent with that. And guess what? If you don't have LinkedIn, then you're probably not my target market. You're not my customer, to be honest with you. So you have to evangelize what you believe in every single day in every task that you do, internally or externally, out of the office. And then people will start to absorb that and they'll start to follow your lead.
Also, when I interview, I kind of go over core values and I'll ask the person, like, what are their personal core values? Are we even aligned? Because that's super important to me, like integrity, innovation, creativity, like these things. If that's not like your vibe, you're probably like not going to vibe with me too.
And so I've actually been going through the process right now of updating our core messaging document. So this is like some Wrangling of schedules is one thing that's really hard, is just like literally getting everyone in the executive team in the same room at the same time when everyone's traveling, when everyone's busy, like that alone, and prioritizing it. So it's like, number one, make sure everyone's prioritizing it. And I actually did a fun exercise where I made everyone write their pitch for the company in one document. So every single person wrote their pitch, and I wanted to see how consistent are we? What are we all saying the same thing? Are we not? Are we using the same words? And then I asked everyone to get it to me before the meeting. So like this was an exercise. I gave them homework. I was like, everyone has homework. You're going to do this. And then after they got it to me, I actually went through and I highlighted the words that we use the same in different colors. And then I feel like that put us on the same path of realizing like, oh, these 5 people, and I literally highlighted, these 5 people are using this word. These 4 people are using a different word. It sounds so basic, but you're just like, we are not pitching the product the same. Like when you're doing an elevator pitch to someone you just meet randomly, we're not saying the same thing. So that's a way to just raise awareness that there's misalignment internally, and then start talking about what should we be saying. And that's kind of puts you on that path to get everyone aligned.
Hi, my name's Calvin. I'm a project manager working to pivot to a more user-driven career. I was wondering, for a consumer goods product or service, how important do you think microeconomic factors and social media trends are that might showcase you have a deeper understanding of the platforms and culture compared to, more general macro data and, brand consistency?
So I think it depends on what kind of brand you are. So there's certain topics that I won't even address for certain brands, even if it's trending, just because it's not who they are. It's not really what their target demographic is coming to them as the expert for. So like you see all of these different trends or these topics or politics, and sometimes it's better to stay away from certain things because people aren't coming to you, like people aren't coming to me for jokes. Like I'm not that funny. So I don't really do anything funny on like social media. And so I'm not like, oh, this joke is trending now. Like, let me do it. It's not my thing. So I think it's really understanding like what the core values are, what the message is, what problems you're solving, and like what your lane is too.
I mean, there's value in catching wind from a particular trend that's going on, but that's so temporary and it's not sustainable. So do you really want to build your business model on that? I say just be as authentic as possible and use whatever channel that's core to your audience, and focus on the storytelling and the producing, not creating, but documenting the journey. And I think that's more sustainable in the long run, and you'll get a lot more value out of that than just riding on one like micro wave that's going on at a particular time.
Hello, my name is Nina Mitchell. I'm not a marketer, but I'm getting more and more assignments of marketing. And so my question is, I'm now tasked to write a marketing plan, a big document. And I was just wondering if there's a template you like. How do you write all this down?
I mean, there are definitely templates out there. And I do think there is value in writing it down. But yeah, this is another thing where I feel like people get stuck on like, oh, if I find the perfect template, I will fix my marketing. Like that's a tough thing. I think when you're being tasked with marketing and you aren't a marketer, that's really hard. You're being put in a situation where you're teaching yourself. And I do think, I've taught myself a bunch of random things over the years. I taught myself how to edit a podcast for some reason from YouTube at some point. And then I realized, hey, actually, you should just pay someone to do that. But there are skills that when you teach yourself, they're fantastic to learn. But yeah, there's not a special template that's going to like teach you how to do the marketing plan. It's more like figuring out, like I said, like focusing on the buyer, focusing on the customer, and what do they need? Where do they spend time? Where do they hang out? That should be your focus channels. All of those things can help you. Like certainly, like I don't know, HubSpot has great templates.
Yeah, in HubSpot you'll find like a lean canvas document I think a lot of startups love using that. It's a fun exercise you could do. Figure out who your competitors are. List, who your potential partners can be. It kind of fine tunes your like core demographic as you're launching. So look for that lean canvas template. That's a good start to at least start to kind of put your ideas on paper. It's all about putting it on paper instead of it being in your mind, because once it starts getting on paper, you'll start to like refine it and make it a little bit more polished. So then you could speak articulately to someone when you're in front of them, and then it'll iterate eventually, but you got to start somewhere. I think that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to start somewhere, right?
I I have a marketing plan template that I use with my clients that I can share with you if you want to connect with me. I also use, if you want to like brainstorm, this is kind of good just for brainstorming. Like Canva has a tool where you can just plug in something and chart it out. So like you can create a whole web or like create your funnel. A lot of funnel tools like HubSpot and other tools like Go High Level also have funnel building platforms that you can kind of build it. But just in the beginning stages, if you don't want to write on a piece of paper that kind of stops where the paper stops, you can do a whiteboard on Canva to get your thoughts out there and kind of draw lines to how things connect just for like rough brainstorming, and then you can take that and use that.
Awesome. Well, let's give our moderator and panelists a huge round of applause.